Yoga is actually a rather complex process of transforming your consciousness. If I thought there was something better than Kriya, then I would impart that something better. But I do not do that, because there is nothing higher than Kriya Babaji. It is a science, and science requires the right attitude towards yourself. It must be studied and gradually applied. I'm often asked, how is Kriya Babaji different from other yoga systems? I have said many times that from the moment when the universe appeared, so did the eternal, unchanging law of this universe. In Vedic philosophy, the eternal, unchanging law of the universe is called Sanatana Dharma. From the very beginning, this law is the manifestation of action. That is, our universe exists, lives, and develops. The universe evolves. That is Kriya. This means that Kriya appeared together with the eternal, unchanging law, when this law became active. Kriya is thus the manifestation of this law in practice, in self-development. The human body is the full manifestation of this cosmic law. It is the result. The human body reflects the entire microcosm in this macro world. In this macrocosm, the human body also contains planets, different planes, and worlds. All these coexist and need to be evolutionarily advanced or transformed. Our consciousness is in charge of these processes. I mean the high consciousness or the higher self. People call this the creator. Some masters call this the cosmic consciousness or the very high consciousness. All this makes up Kriya Babaji. It is the method of evolution that allows a person to accumulate all the knowledge, pulling all the pieces of knowledge together and applying this system through the lens of Kriya transformation. One can put this knowledge into action during one's lifetime, or even in the space of a few years. I do not mean the knowledge that one has acquired, but the knowledge that was given from above. Kriya practice, as yoga of the high path, is the basis for all the other systems and directions. Kriya practice is also the crown of everything. It is the highest stage of Raja Yoga, because all the contributing factors that exist to lead you to your center requires serious transformation themselves. That is the reason why we need to learn the teaching of Kriya Babaji. Babaji gave us this technique with the specific purpose of quick transformation. This is a direct and very open path. It differs greatly from what is being taught nowadays as yoga. For example, from what is taught as Raja Yoga. Why is it so different? Because the techniques and methods are different. When there is confusion over the different systems, people ask me, this Kriya, is it Atma Kriya, Kriya from Raja Yoga, or some other Kriya? It is not actually. This is Kriya Babaji. I will say it again, which significantly differs from all the other systems, for there are certain aspects in the practice itself and in the method of teaching. There are some unique features, let's say, in the perception of this teaching and the technique itself. There are exercises in Raja Yoga, for instance, in which you look into an issue on some level. You examine the issue only on that level, and then you have to move up to the next one. In Kriya practice, any technique you take is Kriya Babaji. I don't mean the Kriya that the other masters give and call it Kriyas, which are just exercises, while I am talking about Kriya Babaji. Any practice you do here is an action performed simultaneously in 3 planes. In addition to the spiritual presence, you always perform an action on the mental level and on the astral level, emotional and physical. So, Kriya Babaji techniques embrace all 3 worlds simultaneously. This is a technique for high awareness of what you are doing and what you are engaged in. In addition to what the yoga of the high path entails, I can say that Kriya Babaji is different from other systems in the transfer technique of special pranayamas that are associated with the psychophysical transformations and are very different from the usual delivery in Raja Yoga. There are laws that have been forgotten inside us, and some systems and directions have emerged based on this. Kriya, as yoga of the high path, allows a person to remember these laws and learn to apply them correctly. The laws of transforming one's consciousness, the right attitude to ourselves, the right attitude to what we are not as a person, but as a manifested consciousness, as a manifested cosmic consciousness. All these aspects together form the right teaching. Nowadays, there are many different theories and systems that superficially provide some knowledge, without understanding the true essence and without bringing people to a deeper level of knowledge. They provide techniques, only techniques, and often do it incorrectly, thus causing a lot of misunderstandings and difficulties. I often have to help people overcome a negative state they found themselves in because they've tried to raise their kundalini and such. I've already said that kundalini doesn't rise, it awakens. The awakening of this high force is associated with spiritual transformation. Unfortunately, we often come across these so-called teachers who provide various techniques that stimulate the activity of Shakti energy. However, when this energy rages out of control like a wild horse, people don't know what to do with it. This is a big problem. At the very least, they experience difficulties, and at worst, people suffer from mental problems, or it could even cost them their lives. That's not right, I think. I believe this subject needs to be studied in detail, and you should be ready to make use of it. Regarding Kriya Yoga Babaji, I can tell you that such deviations, or what is called surges, do not occur when using the Kriya method. Because the method is universal here and works in all directions. It is a very simple, very spiritual, psychophysically expressed, and particularly gentle way of transformation, or advancement to the cosmic consciousness. I will add that when I say Kriya Yoga, I don't mean a type of yoga. I use the term so that you can understand that I mean yoga in general. Yoga is a way of reunion with the higher. When I talk about Kriya Babaji, I am talking about a certain method that was actually imparted by the immortal Himalayan saint himself. And this method acts as an individual one that contains all other systems and directions, as a method of transformation leading to the cosmic consciousness. This is not Kriya Yoga as a type of yoga. It is Kriya as a universal method of transformation. It does not stand alongside the other systems. It stands above all the other systems. When we talk about Kriya Babaji, we often confuse what is Kriya Yoga and what is Kriya Babaji. I often say that Kriya Babaji is not a Kriya Yoga as such. There are many types, cleansing systems and various other types of Kriya Yoga. They are given a lot of additional names, but they are not Kriya Babaji. Babaji imparted a universal method that can't be split into parts or turned into something else, Otherwise, it wouldn't be Kriya Babaji any longer. It will be other systems. There are masters now who give their own names and interpretations of this teaching, but of course, this is not Kriya Babaji. Babaji gave a method that is fundamentally different, not because it is separate in itself, but because people have forgotten this foundation. People have forgotten this very essence, and pieces were separated from this foundation, from this teaching. These pieces were created to form certain systems. These are separate directions and systems that have already been forgotten. If we are talking about what Babaji Kriya is, it is not a type of yoga. It is the teaching given by Babaji himself. The immortal Himalayan saint imparted a system of transformation, which, as I have already said, is very different from everything else because it is primordial. People have forgotten this primordial source. Now is the time to remember it. Again, this is not a separate teaching. This is what unites all the other teachings. If you make serious progress on this path, then you will be able to see that Kriya is present in all other systems and directions. But it is a completely independent direction or method. It is a universal way of transforming consciousness on all levels. Now, regarding what Kriya Babaji is and how it differs from other systems, this is a rather complex question, but I will try to answer it as clearly and succinctly as possible, so you can really understand what Kriya is. Various systems and directions, such as Raja Yoga, which combines all the teachings in yoga, since Raja Yoga is royal yoga, and includes the system of Hatha Yoga, Yama, Niyama, Vayama, or what is called Pranayama, and everything that elevates to the level of Samadhi. People simply divided it into 8 parts. In actual fact, Patanjali himself, Kriya Siddhi Patanjali, gave it to understand what yoga is. He didn't break up yoga, he just gave levels of understanding, but it's all very united. However, there are now wise guys who pose as teachers and provide their own interpretations of all this. And thus, so-called systems and directions have appeared. Hatha Yoga separately, Pranayama Yoga separately, Swara Yoga, Lara Yoga, and such. Such separation emerged from the dual perception, dual mind or minds. Of course, these people are not realized masters because they divide. Kriya Babaji differs from all this as a method, for it is a universal, unifying method. In ordinary yoga, a practitioner gradually ascends up from the bottom. In Kriya Yoga, they descend from above, or move from the top down. That is the difference. I am providing this comparison so that it is clear that these are diametrically opposed systems. Let's talk about how the method of accepting power works, also called pranayama. That is, pranayama gives some levels of understanding, acceptance of energy, and assimilation of this energy. There is no deep breath holding in Kriya Babaji. We do not create conditions that strain the heart and lungs. We create conditions where there is a natural accumulation of prana through special methods of transformation, concentration, visualization, in part, and special modes of breathing itself. So, it is a universal method that works very gently but has a deeper effect than a strenuous practice of many years of transforming one's consciousness and influence or placing a stress on the heart and lungs. Eventually, such strenuous practice leads to illness. There are a lot of differences because I believe that all systems are not a scientific method, while Kriya is based on the correct use of knowledge, what we call the body, the brain, the neurons, and connections. We use the science of Kriya, which allows our consciousness to be transformed in a very gentle way and thus change our life. What is Kriya Babaji and how does it differ from other systems? I can give you an example. Some people practice Laya Yoga. Laya is deep dissolution or tantra yoga, which at worst is considered a sexual practice. Tantrism, as such, is an aspect of unity through the sensation of perception. Laya is dissolution. You can divide the concept itself of yoga into many parts and do some pieces separately. Those parts would be Tantra Yoga, Laya Yoga, Mantra Yoga, yantra yoga, and so on. But you will never see the whole picture. You will not comprehend what is called the one law if you divide it into pieces. Kriya contains all the levels at once. These are mantra, yantra, and tantra. Once again, tantra is not sexual practices. Tantra is unity and the experience of everything that happens at the moment of perceiving the higher. And this is very different from all other systems. In reality, you can approach this through different schools, and eventually you will realize that it does not work. That is exactly what happens in most cases. People come to our seminar and say, "I've been doing something for 10 to 15 years, but nothing happens." This is at best, while at worst, something happens that you want to run away from, get rid of. Therefore, they come to the Kriya techniques, which balance these energies and align the consciousness. All these processes take place during our seminars. Therefore, if we are talking about what the method itself is, I will say again that it is quite universal and has nothing to do with the current types of yoga, which I will not list because they don't really matter. I am putting this bluntly, and maybe I sound a little harsh. But you should understand that yoga is connected with your life. You must understand very clearly why you are doing this and what you will come to, because yoga is actually a rather complex process of transforming your consciousness. If you practice Kriya, you develop your self-awareness, which is not always manifested in other systems and directions in general. It is mentioned, but it isn't there, because the method itself does not look like that. In Kriya practice, you awaken awareness, and this awareness allows you to be in control. Control of your prana life force, control of your consciousness, and mind, at the least. Already allows you to be a sufficiently reasonable person in society, to be able to properly analyze information. This happens when you apply the holy science of Kriya, where your neural connections are awakened. I have never seen such effects in any other system. If I knew of another system more precisely, I have gone through many systems and directions. I have personally experienced them. If I thought there was something better than Kriya, then I would impart that something better. But I do not do that, because there is nothing higher than Kriya Babaji, since it is universal, portable enough, mobile, and understandable. You know what you're engaged in, you know what you're doing, you know where you're going. It is a science, and science requires the right attitude towards yourself. It must be studied and gradually applied. So that is it about the difference in Kriya. Of course, there are a lot of other details, but I will not touch on this subject now, as it will take a great deal of time. Study Kriya seriously, read the books by Yogananda, and you will understand how it differs from the other systems.